Craig? Unless you want to.
Just Craig.
Craig. Craig.
Oh.
Kevin? Jerry, you do them all the time. Cash and insurance.
Oh, okay. I was on Ben yet.
Ben, I found that.
Oh, okay, Ben's.
That one's great.
Oh, okay.
6:30. Let's begin this meeting for October 10th, 2014. Approval of minutes.
All motion?
I'll make second it.
Someone taking notes here?
I can take notes.
Okay. Motion made by Justin, seconded by Mr. Silvernick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Doug couldn't make it tonight, and Ben. So, did you get it set up for Skyping, or?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Anyway, Ben's gonna be at our disposal. He couldn't make it in. So anyway, if we need some help, we'll call him. Anyway, we have a public hearing tonight. It's a request for a variance to place a sign within the required side yard setback and to place up to 2 off-premise signs in a B3 non-central business district. Are you there? Okay, yep. We have the applicant here. You can hang up here and get a phone. We're all
I'm gonna ask the
here.
same question.
Little Paul's getting high tech.
We have all the information we need, Greg?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're working, Ben.
Tell him he's out of order.
He says you're out of order.
Okay, we'd like to hear from the applicant, Riitters Thompson and Olson. Is the mic, is this good enough, just speaking right here?
Can you hear him, Ben? Or do you want the mic? Okay.
Okay, well, I can give you a little,
Could you give your
history.
name and address,
Okay.
please?
I am Roxanne Thompson. My partner Troy Olson. We are the owners of Riitters Thompson Olson. Our address is 1643 Glen Road. And just a little background. We purchased the building that we are requesting the sign for in December of 2013. It underwent a complete renovation over the winter months, and then we moved in May. We are a CPA accounting firm, so the bulk of our clients come to our office probably starting now in November and December as we start year-end planning, and then obviously the tax season, January through April. So one of the things that I think historically, this property was all owned by one owner when the buildings were put up. So share a well, share a sewer, share a driveway, and at that time the property wasn't even annexed into the city. It wasn't in the city limits. Then the next owner of the building that we are in had a chemical dependency counseling business, and obviously anonymity was important for that business. They didn't really want anyone knowing what was back there, and they were very low profile. So it wasn't, that wasn't even important because really, she had no signs up there. That was really, it was supposed to be anonymous. So then we purchased it and realized that under the present sign ordinance, we were not allowed to put an off-premise sign, even though we share a driveway. So what we are requesting, after visiting with Ben and Greg and many of the city council members, is perhaps if we could get a variance because our situation is very unique. You can only access our property from County Road 76 on our shared driveway. You cannot see our building when approaching from the south. We are not visible. We sit underneath Highway 10. It's very high there, and we sit, very low beneath that. That's on our south side. On our north side is a vacant lot that's owned by Earl Lemure. There's nothing on that property. And then kind of on the northeast or northwest is the bowling alley. And so they have their own approach, you know, but that's not a through street, so you can't get to our building from there. So what we're really requesting is we're kind of in a unique situation because you can't see us. We share the driveway. There's no way to, you know, put a sign so that people could see where to turn. The other thing that we have done since we made this application is we visited with the county, and they would approve putting the little blue signs to show you where to turn from each direction. So they would do that. But then the next thing that we would really want to do then, once you've turned in there, we want them to know we're like the second building. We don't want them driving into Chris Graham's radio station and walking in there and going, oh, this isn't the right place. We'd really like them, once they turn, to come back to our parking lot. So that's kind of the synopsis. And the other thing is you know, we have a lot of clients that come from out of town. You know, so when people call, we over and over are saying, well, you turn by the Little Falls radio station. But now as this first tax season approaches, we have hundreds of clients that don't live in Little Falls. They don't all know where the Little Falls radio station is. So we'd like to be able to have them find our business. We'd like to be able to service them, and you know, we hope that we'll be part of the city and the economy for a long time. The business has been in the city since 1978. We have 8 employees out at our location, and we just really want our clients to find us.
Sign number 1, is that real close to the radio station sign or not? Because I know the radio station just put up a nice sign.
Yeah, we've talked, well, and we originally filled out the application to say up to 2 signs in case we weren't able, if the county, the DOT wouldn't have allowed us to put the directional turn signs on Haven Road or on County 76. So we said up to 2, and
Okay.
we would really be happy with, you know, if we could get at least 1 back behind the radio station by our closer to our property.
Okay.
The application was filled out prior to talking to the department or the county and the DOT stuff there. So the second one, if you want to call it the one that's right by Haven Road or up on County 76, we might not even be interested in having that one, because that would be a much smaller one, and we think that the county signs might get people to turn into that approach.
Okay.
Anything else, or?
Well, and just maybe to explain the required, you know, the side yard setback. When we measured, if we were to come in 10 feet, which is the setback, and then 10 feet from the end of the sign, basically the sign would be in the middle of the driveway. So,
That's kind of
yeah, so, you know, you right smack where the driveway is, that's where we would have to almost put it, and so that was not very good.
If you put it on your property, you're talking about.
Even if we put it,
Even if we,
yeah,
Oh, okay.
even if we put it on the radio station's property, by the time you get the setback, you know, the
Okay.
edge of the sign would be,
in the drive, yeah, in the drive.
So by the looks of it, your property line is all the way on the east side?
pardon me?
Your property line's almost on the east side of the
Basically the
building?
east of the building,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's all
Yeah.
tar to the north side where we, you know, so we would, that's why we're asking for the hot premise, because we would have to drill it through tar or asphalt. And we would have to do that too if we could, you know, if we could at least, if we don't get the side yard setback. It was just, and today's a good day, we haven't seen snow yet. And we weren't, you know, like if we didn't put the pole off of the tar and asphalt part of it, the snow plow, the guy, you know, just the plow, to get our driveway plowed out, get our parking lot plowed out, we would probably be able to put the pole off.
Okay, any questions, or do I close the public hearing?
Public comment.
Public comment out there.
You're kidding, right? Of course I'm going to comment.
Then do it.
Is this on? Oh, all
And you
right.
have about, we'll give you about 5 minutes.
What's that?
We'll give you about 5 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
What's your address?
807 First Street Southeast, Little Falls. First, I want to state emphatically that I am very pro-business and that I think the sign ordinance as written is restrictive, way too restrictive on business, but more importantly, it's way too restrictive for free speech. Businesses already in this town get 10 times the amount of free speech. And that's upside down according to the Constitution. You can look it up. It's a fact. Secondly, if this flies, and I really hope you do pass this, because I think they're in a quandary, but I think this is the first of many quandaries that the city's going to see. The Senior Citizen Center has to park a trailer on Broadway to advertise their donut sale. That's a sham. The farmer's market in both locations cannot have an on-premise location sign. At present, there are, that I know of at least, 2 illegal, according to the definition as I'm reading it.
Can
And
you
as-
stick to what we're discussing here?
Well,
in
but we're
public
talking
hearing?
about off-premise signs, as they're requesting.
Let's talk about theirs.
Okay, but it is important to note that there are 2 at present, as I believe, and people who know the law believe. And if there's going to be a loophole for the Boys and Girls Club to be, their pop can collection to be in front of Donna
Robin, could you
Jim's,
please hold it for a second?
or the Zion Lutheran Church
There's
having
no
one on the
proof
Roach
or
property,
anything
then that's a
that
slight
says
already to them.
Theirs are illegal.
Well,
You're
okay.
making assumptions. Let's stick to
It
business.
is not an assumption, according to the definition of an on-premise sign and an off-premise sign. There isn't any reason right now why they couldn't legally put one up, because those 2 have been left up since April of this year, or maybe it's May. I'm troubled by that. I track this stuff. So, Mike, I got a couple questions and I don't want it to cut into my public time. I'd like to have an answer tonight before I leave here from Ben Olson or you, Greg, or someone. Whose idea was this to find this loophole in the law? And why wasn't this loophole looked into at the time when I first reported the 2 signs that are right now at present off premise that I just mentioned, the 2 pop can collection bin signs? Why wasn't it addressed back then months ago? Because that was at around the same time.
How was a pop can collection a sign?
They have signs on those pop can
Yeah, they
collections.
tell you to put pop cans in them, it's not a
Wait,
business
this is my
sign.
public hearing time. Now, you're not supposed to be interrupting me. Thank you.
But we have to stick to what's the.
But let me finish, please. These people came to the city council and to you guys and asked for a variance at around the same time. July 23rd is when I had my hearing up in Duluth. When I came back into town, there was an illegal banner out of their property. Why wasn't this addressed back then? Why now? Everything seems to be upside down and backwards in you guys, how this is all operating. And that's not fair and it's not right. So that's, okay, so I'd like an answer to whose idea was this? Did the city attorney, was she involved in helping come up with this? In any way? I'd like an answer for that eventually. Then I
I'm
want to,
not here to give answers like that. That would be an attorney issue, something like if you want information like this, you go to the city hall, the front office like anyone else, and you get the information. We are here for one purpose, to listen to these folks and try to figure out what's gonna happen here.
you're also here
It
to listen
has
to the public and
nothing-
you're interrupting me
it
again,
has
Frank.
nothing- no,
Why are you
are
interrupting me?
our meeting. We
I'm
are
not interrupting
here-
your meeting.
Uh,
I'm talking in a public hearing. You said I had 5 minutes. I'm not
You
anywhere
have
near
5
that.
minutes, and it says right on, the way we run the meetings here.
You're
you need
still
to
talking in
focus
my
on
public
this.
hearing time, Frank. Excuse me, but you are.
You're talking in our public hearing time where we're trying to
This is
deal
public
with this
hearing
stuff.
time.
No, it's
Not your
not. It's a
public
public
hearing.
hearing concerning this issue
Right,
only. It's
right.
not concerning the whole
But this
world.
issue is about an off-premise sign.
How much more time?
Okay, now I have a question, and I'd like it answered. Also, it says the Board of Appeals and Adjustments, or the governing body, as the case may be, may not permit a variance. Any use that's not allowed under the zoning ordinance for property in the zone where the affected person's land is located. Please, someone clarify for me where in the sign ordinance, or where in the variances ordinance, it states that a sign can get a conditional use permit. Again, I want to emphatically state that I am for them being allowed this. But if you're
Time's
going to
up.
do it for them, you have to do
Time's
it for
up.
others.
Anyway, let's get back to the business that was at hand, dealing with the property mentioned in the public hearing, not property all over the city of Little Falls. That's a total different issue. That can be dealt with through, if somebody's concerned about that, they can get a hold of the office personnel and they can answer some of them questions. We are here dealing with this. So we're going to continue with that. Anyone else out there have any questions pertaining to this public hearing? Okay. Hearing none, let's move on. At this time, we're going to close the public hearing. 6:46. It started at 6:32. And we'll open up to discussion. Board. Does Ben have anything to say on this?
Well, just to kind of quickly summarize the staff report and some of the comments at the end, you know, that this came up a while back. We talked to the applicants about their options, and one of the options we talked about was the possibility of changing the ordinance in some manner so that it would allow for their kind of situation where they're essentially landlocked. They decided to go to the council and brought it up there. It wasn't something that the council looked like they were going to support. And so then we talked about the variance option and you know, kind of indicating that I didn't know how that would turn out and it may not help them, but they had that option to apply. So they went with that route. Now, in terms of the legalities here, they're asking for two variances. One is in relation to the side yard. And that's pretty clear that that's no problem to ask for that kind of a variance. In terms of asking for a off-premise sign, there's some question and debate, I think, about whether that would be considered a variance that they can apply for, or a use variance, which is in the staff report. I kind of explained that, but you know, whether that could be allowed. And I talked to the city attorney and I talked to an attorney at the League of Minnesota Cities, and they basically sort of, I think, concluded that it wasn't clear. So I kind of laid out in the staff report, and I won't go over that again unless you want me to, but I think there's two ways to look at it, and either look at it as a use variance that you can grant a variance to, or what's called an area variance, and basically just referring to the location of it. But either way, I think if you decide that you're not going to grant this the off-premise sign variance, you can still grant a side yard setback variance that would apply to their own property, and that would at least give them the option of putting the sign up, you know, east of the or north of the driveway that they have going in there. If that makes sense. So there's that issue. You know, I mentioned about possibly changing ordinance. That didn't go very well with the council. And then just generally, I haven't received any written comments on this, so it's just whatever comments you receive there tonight.
Thank you. Greg, you have something to add? Okay.
So I guess let me ask a question. Do we want to have two separate issues? You know, sign number one and sign number two, or do we want to vote on both of them together? Just one?
But there was just one sign.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just if I may on that question, I think you might want to take them in two questions, but one would be whether any off-premise sign would be allowed, whether it's one of them or two of them. And then the second question is whether the side yard setback variance could be granted, whether it's on their own property or whether it's on the radio station property. So for example, if you grant the side yard setback variance, then they're gonna put it on this radio station property. If you don't grant that portion of it, then they could have the option of putting it on their own property within the side yard setback if you grant that portion of it. So either way, they're gonna need a side yard setback variance, whether it's on their own property or this radio station.
Or else it's like, the petitioner said, it'd be right down the center of the road and you can't have that, so, okay. Any other questions?
I'm unclear now what we're asking for.
I'm confused.
Initially, early on in the meeting, you mentioned that we're really talking about one sign. Now that the directional signs on 76 were approved,
I think we would be happy with that, but when we had to get this application to you for timeliness, Ben said it would be best to maybe say up to 2, because we had not received the okay from the county yet.
so your initial request was to have a sign somewhere closer to County 76.
To address where to turn,
Yes.
yeah.
And then a second sign saying, here I am
Come to
back
the
here.
second building.
I'm back here.
Mhm.
So
Correct.
now, an amended version of that, are you still looking for 2 signs?
We were, I know, like, the application said up to 2, and we went into this knowing that, that you guys, the commission, could say, we may not grant one up by County Road 76 if you've got a directional, or if you've got the county signs now. Our main concern is to have a sign that directs you, or that is backed by our property, that's a little bit, that would at least let clients know that we're the second building.
And so sign number 2, the park here sign, would actually be located on your property. Yes?
If we
Or-
gave a variance.
Well, we're
No.
talking about reducing the
For
setback.
yeah.
So if we reduce the setback right to the property line, I mean, I don't think we can grant a variance to allow a sign on someone else's property. I think someone else could say, yeah, you can put your sign there, but I don't think we can grant a variance and say, yeah, go ahead and put a sign on,
No.
Well, we'll have to-
That's why we had to have Chris Brown and Seven Gables Properties, who's the owner of the lot from 76 back to the west to our property. She had to sign off on it to say that she would allow it if you guys
Yes.
would
Oh,
approve the variance.
okay.
That was, her name is on our application along with us as the property owner. We're
Okay.
just the applicants because it's not on our property.
So the park here sign
Yep.
would be somewhere near that property line, or,
It'd be very close to ours, but ours
Maybe on
is
there.
our all tar.
Yeah.
Okay.
From our east line is basically all tar.
oh, okay.
And that's why just a couple feet or a few feet in front of it, it would really technically be on her property, and that's why we would say, could we put it in the grass instead of drilling through the asphalt over top?
And Chris Frams is 7 Gables.
She is the owner of Seven Gables Properties.
Okay.
So we basically put it all on one application, and if we do, you guys can
So-
pick and choose, I guess, whether you approve or not approve. If that makes sense.
Well, I'm looking at it, we can toss a thorny issue back at the city council with a can of worms and say, we'll approve this off-premise thing here. But if we don't talk about off-premise and simply talk about setback should not be a problem. Off-premise seems to be the problem.
It's like Ben was saying, off-premise would require a change in the ordinance, which would mean it's gonna go a lot further than just sitting here. at
No, he
this
said we could use a, what was the term you said, Ben, a
Change
like
of use.
change of use variance?
Variance.
Use variance.
So it wouldn't change the ordinance, it would be a change of use variance.
Well, if they change the ordinance, a change in the ordinance would be whatever it ended up being, but it would probably have to be something that would allow for an off-premise sign in certain limited circumstances, assuming the city doesn't want to allow them everywhere. And we'd have to talk about that and figure out whether that would be feasible or whether it would be something that would work and that would be legal and all those kinds of things. But, you know, theoretically, we could find a way, if the city wanted to allow off-premise signs. I mean, there's other counties and cities and townships that allow off-premise signs, and so it's just a matter of figuring out whether you can do it in a way that works for what you want and what's legal. But at this point, you know, the attorneys I talked to, again, the city attorney and the League of Minnesota Cities attorney, they didn't say that we couldn't grant this kind of variance. They didn't say that we could. It's just that it's kind of a gray area that, you know, hasn't been settled by any court cases or anything at this point. So
I think without talking to our attorney, I think the cleanest way would be to have on-premise, but a variance to the setback requirements. Because our ordinance currently is pretty clear cut, no off-premise signs. By having it on their property, even though it's in blacktop, by having it on their property, the variance that you'd be looking at would be strictly their property and strictly the setback requirements.
But that would eliminate sign number 1.
True.
Okay.
But the county has already indicated that they're receptive to allowing sign number 1 in their right of way.
Actually, it's their sign, right? It's the county sign? It's one of the generic ones?
There's a fee for it, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's, you know, you
Okay.
can start renting it or.
Okay.
or-
It's the blue ones that direct you to
Yes.
McDonald's or
Yes.
whatever down the road. Okay.
And originally, when we had contacted them, they said, well, contact Department of Transportation, and when we contacted Department of Transportation, they said, oh no, we only do that for certain businesses, and an accounting firm isn't one of those businesses. Because, you know, you'll see those coming up a Highway 10, like, usually restaurants, gas stations, and they said, yes, you don't qualify for that, and then we came to the city, so we sort of feel like we're in this circle that we can't quite get out of, but the county did say, yes, they have been out there, and yes, they would approve one from both directions. So if you're coming from the north or the south, here's where you turn. But then what we are trying to happen is, here's where we are. We're not in the radio station building.
So is height an issue? Is that 2 back there?
In terms of being able to see it from the south,
Right.
well, it would be an issue, yeah. I mean, you couldn't put it, I mean, you could put it 30 feet high, but you're not gonna see it because of the Highway 10 embankment.
You'd have to be 50 feet up.
Yes. But we feel if they turn in the driveway and where this is placed, the second, like we look, the second you turn in the driveway, you would see the sign. Now you know where to go.
I like what Ray said about
You just
putting it
go
on
out
the
this
property.
back.
I like what Greg said when he agreed with Ray,
I'm sure
that
city-
we're not dealing with off-premise sign, which is a big issue, or has been. So I'm kind of looking if that is, and this is just a recommending body, by the way, this isn't cut and dry. And the council will have to look at it. If there's somebody on the council who doesn't feel comfortable, they're probably going to request further information coming in or something.
Right.
We could take a look at this and kind of from the information we have, we can give a recommendation. And I guess that's what we're here for now.
Mhm.
Anyone else have anything else to say about this?
I'm gonna throw it out there, you guys obviously can make your decisions. Is it something that the board wants to review with the city attorney before you make a recommendation? Or do you feel comfortable enough to be able to make that decision? And I know you guys are looking at getting things moving here.
We are, but it's not as desirable if it's on our own property, because our parking lot is limited. Unfortunately, the way the land is platted, it comes right to the edge of the building. You know, even the fence that's out there, technically it's not on our property. So now once even with the setback, we're in our parking lot. Where we had requested it, it's in the grass, it's not in the driveway.
So you don't own that building, you just rent it, or you own?
No, we own the building.
And she won't sell you 10 feet of line back there? I know it's not the most desirable thing to buy, but
To answer that question, I don't think that she will, and the only reason I say that is in conversations with her, when you look at her lot is almost exactly an acre, and for some reason, she thinks she needs an acre of land for whatever, to protect her asset or whatever she's made that comment.
She's comfortable with that.
Is comfortable with I think hers is 1.1.
1.01.
I think, yeah. So,
She stated that.
so she didn't make that comment, so we haven't asked her that specifically, I guess. But in her comments, she made it sound like she didn't want to have less than an acre for her lot.
And I think she's looking out for herself or for her, in case she isn't always a radio station. It's easier to sell when you're over that 1 acre rather than, as soon as you start getting under any variances for that, then.
So how many businesses are like this one that's smaller than another business? I mean, this one's pretty unique,
Yeah.
you know?
Wasn't this originally built as a house? As a
Daycare.
Daycare, that's right, okay, now I remember.
Mhm.
It was originally built as a daycare.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then at that time, they all owned.
Yeah, the whole thing,
Owner.
yeah. Can never be easy, can it?
Yeah, I guess to answer that, I'm not sure we know of any other businesses that are as unique as this one because of a couple things. It was the same ownership structure when it was originally built, not part of the city when it was originally built, and then we got annexed in, and so, they fall under the.
So I guess I asked that question, I guess it could come up again, but how many other times are we gonna deal with something this unique, you know? Maybe it's rhetorical.
There's no answer for that.
Right.
I'm not aware of any of them, but part of the lot split and platting requirements is that you have road frontage. And in this particular case, the only road frontage they have is Highway 10. But that is technically,
Is that considered road frontage?
not really, because there's,
Limited access.
right of entry requirements for that are limited access signs. MinDOT won't let you have access on it.
Yeah. Well, this is the top of the grid,
Yeah.
overpass, so yeah, it's impossible, okay.
Can I just inject something? There are 2 locations already that are clear to everybody here, and that's the farmers markets. They're never going to be able to have a sign on their own property.
they don't own the property,
They don't
period.
have any property.
So
But they're a
floating around
business,
town.
they're a legitimate business, and they have had to use signs on their vehicles in order to be legit. In fact, they came here, Gigi Dimbovi came here and asking you guys for this. The Senior Citizen Center has a donut sale that's very important to the survival of their economics. There's countless church suppers that want to advertise in different locations.
We didn't make that rule.
No,
That rule has got nothing to do with us.
But you're struggling with whether or not there's other locations. Already you have the 2 farmers market.
That's completely different again. That would have to be something that, like I mentioned earlier, you'd have to bring up, and council wants to look into changing some of that. And they'll either direct it to like the planning commission, talk to their attorneys. I mean, this has nothing to do with this case. We are looking at this property here, trying to figure out if there's a feasible way to put signage out there without putting ourselves in a position of a lawsuit. It has to be a legal thing here. And we have to look at all variables here to make sure this is done right. At this point, I do like what I'm hearing about the sign right on your property and allowing a variance to move it closer to the property line. That looks more likely to me, but I'm still not even clear on that. I would like to get a hold of an attorney that deals with signage and knows a lot about this to make sure this city is covered. And again, the only thing that could come from this, if we gave a recommendation, I'd probably get a write-up on me for saying something, you know, by certain parties in a blog or somewhere, and trying to make me look bad. So I'm not ready to make that decision right now. I want to make sure this is covered, and I'm not going to say something out here that's going to make us look bad. It's more important this is done right. So at this point, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to get a little bit more information even before this planning commission makes a decision or a recommendation. And then beyond that, it's up to the council anyway. They might look at it totally different. But at least we're trying to do our job the best we can.
We would welcome you to come out and kind of see,
I've looked at it since you came to the council. I've been tasked here numerous times looking at just how can you do this, and I can't see anything further than you guys can. It's just you're stuck back in a hole, and you're in a business, and we do want businesses, and you do need signage. That's a fact, or else you're going to lose a lot of it. And,
Mr. President? Say, Ben, as far as granting a variance on premise, a setback variance, do we have any issues with that? If we could grant that, if they wanted to go ahead?
No, I don't think there's any question that you can grant that kind of a variance if you feel like it's justified. You know, if they have what's called a practical difficulty in the statute, which, they've talked about how to meet that 10-foot side yard setback and put it right in the middle of their driveway.
Right.
That would be the obvious argument, I think. So yeah, there's really no problem. That's a pretty standard kind of variance request that's made all the time. Is things to have a closer setback than would otherwise be required. So really, I think the only unique thing here is this off-premise question, because obviously they have a pretty unique situation with their lot configuration and the roads and the lack of usable road frontage for signage. When you couple that with the fact that off-premise signs are just generally prohibited in the city, I think that's where you get the complications. And I don't know if you talk to an attorney, if you find somebody really experienced, you might get a more clear answer than what I've gotten so far. But
So could
I
we,
would be surprised if we went and started trying to get more information from an attorney and they ended up saying, well, a couple ways to look at this, and here's what I'd recommend, but in the end, it's kind of a gray question that you don't get settled until you have a court case on it.
right, so could we grant this, the side yard variance, and then table the off-premise?
Sure, that would be an option, yeah.
So we could prove that part, so if they wanted to put it on their own property,
Yeah.
we could go to the council with that. And then with the off-premise signs,
That's a whole nother issue.
that'd be a whole, yeah.
Right. So if you were to go there, well, if you can, I don't know if they have, I didn't hear if they had a specific number of how far from that property line they wanted to be, but if they don't, you could grant it to be 0 feet or 1 foot or whatever you think is appropriate and will work for them. But yes, I think you could certainly act on that variance and table the other one, or act on them separately, in the sense of either decide one way or approve one and deny the other, or approve one and table the other, or you could deny both.
Right. You never talked with Paul Reavers at all on
No, I
this?
haven't talked to Paul Reavers. No, it was a League of Minnesota Cities attorney. His name was Chet Burkett.
Okay.
And I think he consulted not with Paul Reavers, but with another attorney at the office there.
Right.
And I came back with this answer that, it's unclear in the case history.
Well, I don't want to speak for the council, but I find it'll be hard to believe that they'll grant an off-premise sign.
If we went with like a 0 setback on your property line, would that work for you? Maybe?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like you said, if we had to remove some asphalt or something like that for we would maybe do that, I guess I'm not sure.
Is the, do I understand that the edge of the driveway is your property line?
We believe it to be. I mean, the north edge
Is the parking lot you're talking about?
Yeah.
and east.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you want to put this on the east end of that, right?
Be the northeast.
On the line,
Northeast corner.
the northeast corner.
Yes, yes.
And your asphalt begins at that northeast corner.
One question, I see property on the west side of your building. What is that used for?
There's a storage facility there, but there's no access. There's no road to it. I'm not even sure who owns it.
It was Pedley's car garage at one time.
It was part of the
It was part of the bowling alley.
bowling alley, yes.
Okay.
Pedley kept antique cars in there.
Okay, but the west side of your building, it looks like there's property, your property,
Up to the Highway 10 frontage, you saying?
Up to the property line with
up
the
to
bowling
the
alley.
property line with the
Up to that
bowling alley.
shed.
Yeah, Frank's looking at the block, that one.
That's just open space?
That's what the one is.
Yeah.
This is all blocked up.
So that could be used for parking
This
also.
is the building.
I suppose technically it could be
Yeah,
that. We-
okay.
You want to put it here, this is the building.
Well, it's, here's a slate.
I'm just looking at, so if you did put a sign on the northeast end of your property, it'd take away maybe one parking stall, which maybe you can make up on the west side of the building, is what I'm looking at.
Yes, can I look, can I
Yeah.
approach it where you're, can I just where you're, make
Okay.
sure that I understand?
Here's your building right here, right?
Yep.
Okay, here's the parking lot we're talking about, signage issues over here. You have this property over here.
I think the issue is this driveway, even with the, you know, like if in this very far northeast corner, if there was a zero setback, unless the sign was 1 foot wide, and, you know, we would have
Yeah.
issues with people driving and
Going under the sign.
going on possibly, yeah, and we had it higher.
This, so this is driveway.
Correct. That's all driving off of 76.
This is all driveway. And this is your parking lot.
There's parking from the building.
There's stalls here, but
6 or 7.
This is driveway.
Correct.
So this,
Correct.
that's driveway. And, what are we looking at?
There's a parking space there.
And so if a park here sign were to be placed even on the edge of the property, it would take that parking spot, probably. Trying to understand.
Yeah.
How big of a sign do you guys want, I guess? Obviously not Chris's size, but what do you think of getting one up there, maybe an illuminated sign up like that?
3 by 8, I believe.
Yeah, the application is for a 3 by 8,
Okay.
Yeah.
single one-sided sign, 8 foot tall overall.
Okay.
And sort of like when you, that's about the size it needs to be to read it when you come in. So.
So it's not gonna be a pylon sign, it's gonna be a ground sign.
No, it'll be on a pylon.
Like that.
There should be a picture.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah, just like
Yeah,
that.
it's not very good.
But
That would be
that's
okay.
an idea, yeah.
Yeah, but overall height, you're talking 8 feet, so it's only gonna be, it's not gonna be 20 feet up in the air.
No. Be 8 foot one, 8 foot wide.
Right, because
3 foot
here,
high,
3 by 8
however
overall,
long,
8 feet high, right?
8 foot high. Just so we have 4,
It'd be
so people can see
hard
where
to
it's
slide
going.
under it, but if you kicked it up a little bit, it would.
What's those?
And that was just, I mean, like, that was, we talked to Froggy is who we, you know, said what would be the, you know, what would be the standard size, basically, and since I think Froggy had done the Falls Radio, he just said that would, you know, a pole sign, like a pylon sign, and so I don't think that height is an issue. Is that true? Is height not an issue? How high can the?
Up to 30 feet.
Up to 30 feet, at the top of the
I
sign.
say, that's what I was saying, if you had a 12-foot base, 12-inch base, and put it 15, 20 feet in the air, people are gonna be more apt to see it, like the radio station, they just got a single pylon. And put it up in the air 20
Yeah,
feet.
yeah,
That's true.
yep, I
It'd probably
just.
help with some of the, but I don't know the difference.
Another part
Then
of
you
the-
can
Price
put
of
it
the
on your
sign.
land, you know.
And then if you did put it up, that's 4 feet out, that'd be 5 feet from the property line versus 8.
Thing is, you get it up 15 feet too, and then vehicles drive underneath it, you just have a single pole instead of a big, so it would be over the parking space, parking area.
Yeah, I think as Ben said, the side yard setback is is a very
Right.
critical feature, just
Yeah.
because of the border.
The side yard setback goes to the other side. So even if it was 12 feet up, 20 feet up, whatever that matters.
It's still gonna be 10 feet back.
Still
You still gotta be.
So if we went with a on premises zero lot line sign, that might work.
Good, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, like, we would certainly
Try that.
be appreciative if you, I mean, like, if you would approve that, that would be great. And from our perspective, if you would table the off-premise and not just,
Throw it out the window.
throw it out.
Yeah, that's where all the problems are coming in. are the
Yeah,
off-premise
so I mean, like,
things.
and then it would be our decision on if we wanted to go ahead with the sign right
Right.
this second, or if we wanted to wait until you guys. did
Next
your
year and do
homework.
something with the off premises.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
That
So,
addresses Robin, what she was talking about earlier. Now we're running into what you were talking about. In order to change the off-premise thing, that's something you have to bring to the council and see if they want to pursue it at this time. Your concerns about the farmer's market, about
the senior center.
senior center, and stuff like that. And like Ben was talking about earlier, maybe parts of that off-premise ordinance can be changed to help out some of these issues, even though we don't want to change it maybe across the whole town. It can be adjusted, so. But that's not in our ballpark right now. Right now, we're dealing with this, and
I want to make a motion that we allow for zero property line setback on premises sign.
Sign on the signs, okay.
Side setback, excuse me.
Second that.
Can you write that?
motion
Yeah, I
made
think
by
we're
Keith.
taking-
You got, you know what we're saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what the request is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Okay, there was a motion made by Keith, seconded by Jeremy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And as presented, it will go before the council.
Do you want to table the off-premise?
We're gonna table that off-premise section of
I
it.
move we table the off-premise request.
So, when, for day, next meeting?
So sometime in the future.
In the future.
You can table it indefinitely. Until someone brings it forward again. Does that work?
I'll just, we'll table that.
Because I don't know if you're gonna have an answer on what you want to do by next meeting. You might, I don't know.
Right. I mean, it could be, from our perspective, if it could be brought up at the next meeting, I don't know if that's enough time to do your homework or not, but, you know.
We can table it and leave it in old business.
I think we should still get a feeling from the council, if they're, instead of wasting
Ask
a
their
bunch of
opinion,
time.
yeah, there you go. Would they even consider it, or are they just gonna say, no, we're not, at this time, we don't wanna delve into that? Okay? But now, this would go before the city council next week,
The on-premise
Yeah.
request, yes.
Monday night. Because like Frank was saying, we just recommend they have to approve.
Yeah.
So we've got a motion? All right.
Like he said, ask the city council, they even want to consider it.
There's a motion made and seconded. dealing with tabling the off-premise portion of their request. Do I hear all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's where it stands as far as we're concerned. So according to Greg, it's going to be on the next city council meeting, and then they'll vote it up or down and have discussions, and maybe they'll table it. Who knows?
Probably be a good idea to be there Monday night, 7:30.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, and then follow that. Here's some new business. It's the stormwater management ordinance update. Greg, that's in your ballpark.
That's my fault here. Thank you. Basically, at the last council meeting, we had the first hearing for a moratorium on development. Basically, that's for any land disturbing activity greater than, people who are greater than 2 single-family homes or 2 townhomes, or if the building is greater than 10% of an expansion. Essentially, what we're looking at doing, back in 2003, I believe it was, an NPDS permit, which is a stormwater permit. That's where you land disturbing type of stuff. That was originally passed. We have an ordinance in place right now that deals with stormwater ponds, but it doesn't look like our ordinance has been updated since then. In 2008, there was a second NPDS permit, and in 2013, there was also another one that was passed. And so what I'm looking at doing is basically making sure that our ordinance here corresponds with what is in the newest NPDS permit. Basically, infiltration, there's a number of steps you have to look at before you can have a pond for stormwater pond. Infiltration is looked at first, then it goes to detention, and then retention, and then basically the buffer strip. After that, there's no other way. So, like I said, we have this in the current ordinance for a couple of things, but I'm looking to get this updated with the new stuff. Now, I do have the ordinance prepared, and we're actually going to have it discussed at the Monday night's meeting. So I can kind of go through, and this is more FYI, we don't have to have action today, but I'm looking to, like I said, infiltration being one, flow rates, to make sure that is consistent with pre-development and post-development. So if they're sending you a gallon of water once they put this big building up, a gallon of water is what you get next. They've got to handle it on site, to drop it down below that. And that's a requirement of the NPDS. Again, it's got to be in our ordinance to be able to do that. In addition to that, and our ordinance does currently require it, but I haven't seen any of those as of yet. But it's basically a report on what the development would look like. So it's a stormwater management plan. So once this whole area gets developed, how is the stormwater going to react? When it rains, where's the water going to go? In that 500-year event or 6-inch rain event like we had this year, where's the emergency overflow? Our storm sewers are only designed for a 10-year storm sewer. It's going to go somewhere. We want to know where it's going to go and put that requirement back on the developers to say, we looked at this is where the water is going to travel, not cause a problem to this development. So look at what's coming upstream, where it's going downstream, to make sure that you can handle what's coming in. So that's what that stormwater management plan requires. It does require some legwork on the developer's part, but I also want to protect the city in terms of their infrastructure and all the residents. So that's why I'm kind of trying to get this through here sooner rather than later. We do have some exemptions for the stormwater management plan, and they're consistent with the current exemptions. So if somebody bought a lot and they want to put up one single family home, that's not going to trigger a stormwater management plan. If somebody built a lot and they want to put townhomes, 2 townhomes together, that's not going to trigger it. But once you get into more than that, multiple ones, then it comes into play. If you have a business and you expand more than 5,000 square feet or 10% of your area, that's going to trigger the stormwater management plan.
So for example, when Country Inn and Suites expanded, they had to have that.
That would have triggered it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that instance,
They did.
they did, you know, it just wasn't followed at the time. So I wanna make sure that we have that, we follow it, and start putting some pressure back on the developers to look at that, because it can become a problem. We've been fortunate enough that most of the east side, you know, up until like at 7th Street, we've got pretty sandy soils. From 7th Street over, it's a silty sand, so once it gets wet, it doesn't drain very well. The west side has a high water table, so we wanna make sure that this person who's developing isn't just looking out for themselves. Okay? Developers are in their business. They wanna make as much money on it as possible. I respect it, I understand it, but I also wanna make sure that we're protective and it doesn't become our problem.
So you're gonna make the changes, or you have made the changes to the ordinance?
I have made the changes to the ordinance. Last meeting, at the last council meeting, we introduced a moratorium, so we have time to get these in place, basically until February 6th is when the moratorium expires. This meeting on the 17th, it'll come into effect because we have two readings on the moratorium, and then we'll also have the first reading on the stormwater management plan in order to get that one. So it's one council meeting behind, but I felt it important to at least get this process going in the event we wanted to make any changes to the stormwater management plan. Any questions?
Nope, go ahead.
No, I like a good group on the west side.
Said it's all perfectly clear.
Yeah.
I have a question, may I ask?
Yeah.
Did I hear you say that the Country Inn and Suites did not meet the stormwater management requirements?
I didn't say they didn't meet it. We haven't seen it. We haven't required a report on it because it was before any of this was really being followed. So I know it was designed by a licensed engineer, so I suspect it's going to be, but we didn't have any of the documentation and reports to verify that. I know they built additional ponds, but I don't know if it was sized for a 10-year, 100-year. I don't know that answer.
But they met the requirements at the time, so they're good to go.
They met the requirements at the time, yes. But again, what that storm event is, I don't know.
And like everything, times keep changing and you have to adjust accordingly.
We have to adjust accordingly, yeah. And that's, I wouldn't say Country Inn and Suites is what triggered this, but I was looking at stormwater ordinance and it triggered, well, some of these things aren't in our ordinance right now. Let's make sure we get that.
They've added them.
Well, it's like the discussion you had about the Coburn's property and to the west of it.
Yep.
And that should all be something we deal with.
Yep.
So you don't need action from us.
That is correct. Yeah, it's more an FYI, keep you guys up to speed, and just to try and vet out any questions and concerns before.
So the stormwater management ordinance or plan as it is now, before this moratorium thing goes in effect, really isn't adequate to meet the standards of the state or some other level of government, is that right?
Yes and no, and I know that's a vague answer. The requirements of the stormwater management plan is for a 3-inch rain event. 3 inches generally about a, if I remember right, a 2-year event. They call it the first flush. So any oil, any dirt, anything like that in the parking lot would get into those into those ponds. Our storm sewer system generally is designed for a 10-year event. The stormwater ponds are designed for a 100-year event. So we want to look at all of those rain events, the 3-inch, the 4-inch, and the 5-inch, corresponding to those various downpours that we get, to make sure that the various components of our system can handle those different types.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's good you're looking into the future here.
Yep.
He's got some more
Was there any other new business?
I make a motion for adjournment.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is over.
Justin, don't hustle up.
I'm perfect.